No, I
Austin, I'm like,
That's a bit.
well, and I thought it was unclear.
I thought so too.
I thought it said like. I thought
Alright.
it-
call the May 19th, 2025 Polk City Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Roll call.
Jenkins.
Here.
Bridget.
Here.
Olseth.
Here.
Triplett.
Here.
And Austin.
Here. Item 3, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Item 4, approval of P&Z Commission meeting minutes for April 21st, 2025.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the April 21st meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item 5, Kaler Golf rezoning and PUD amendment. Anybody from the developer side that would like to speak? Would you like to come up to the podium and name and address, please?
My name is Stephen Kaler. Address is 10325 Hidden Valley Drive, Johnston, Iowa. Business address is 1000 Tradition Drive, Polk City, Iowa. So I'm the owner of the Kaler Golf Shop there on 3rd Street. And from when we started the project to today, some things have changed within my business that at the time I only owned 25% of Tournament Club of Iowa. I now own 100% of Tournament Club of Iowa. And no longer, so therefore I have full access to our shop that's next door to it and no longer have the need that I did a couple years ago when we started that project. So not looking to actually change the zoning as it's still C2, but looking to remove the PUD portion of that that has it in conjunction with a golf course.
Okay. Any questions at the current time for Stephen?
What is your planned use for that?
Storage, so originally the planned use, so I also manage Amana Colonies Golf Club. So the original use was for some specialty pieces of equipment that it didn't necessarily make sense for Tournament Club of Iowa or Amana Colonies Golf Club or any other golf courses to use outright. If you remember the derecho storm, we needed some forestry mulchers, grapple buckets, tractors, skid loaders, things of that nature. So the original intention was to use it to store those pieces of equipment that I would own under my Kaler Golf umbrella, and then we would rent back and forth between Tournament Club of Iowa, Amana Colonies Golf Club, if other golf courses wanted to use it as well. Now, I can do that out of the shop that we have right next door to it. And so that the building itself could be used for whatever is under the C2 umbrella, storage of some sort, anything that would fall under the C2 umbrella.
Which could be retail, it could be a litany of items, is that
Correct.
correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so when you purchased this land, you knew what the A through F restrictions were, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Just want to make sure that.
Okay, this is city engineer report.
Yeah, so, as Stephen mentioned, the zoning is a PUD with specific restrictions related to uses, subservient to the operation, maintenance, and otherwise associated with golf courses, specifically things like grandstands, maintenance equipment, things of that nature. The proposal is to remove the C2, or the restrictions on the C2. And just because it's in a PUD, the operation for that is we would amend this lot out of the PUD and then rezone from PUD to C2. It would be all part of one action, but basically that's the step-by-step mechanism by which we would be altering this. The developers approached the property owners within the 250-foot buffer exclusive of right-of-way, and excluding the city-owned parcel to the south, he has collected signatures on over 87% of the adjacent property owners as consenting to this rezoning. From the city's perspective, if Stephen no longer has a need for it associated with the golf course, we don't see a lot of issues in terms of removing those restrictions and rezoning it to C2. We would recommend approval of this rezoning request. Primarily because any use that comes in behind this will have to either slightly amend the site plan based on what was previously approved, or if there's a higher intensity use, we would look at traffic generation, access management, things of that nature at that time. And then the other item, so the reason that this rezoning isn't paired with a site plan amendment or something like that is when this property was developed, we have ingress egress easements as well as any other shared access easements for this property. So these lots, as they were split as part of the Taylor Golf Plat 1, can be operated as separate entities and separate lots. So all of this was taken into account on the off chance that this exact situation happened. And so staff is supportive of this proposal.
Okay. Any questions from the commission for,
I might have some after the public.
okay.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. We have a couple of other commercial properties around the city that developed as commercial after the surrounding area already had residential fully developed around it. And several of those properties have restrictions. And how we had that set up was if they want new, as opposed to giving them full access to all of the commercial uses, we would have them come in, say what they want the use to be. If we determined that to be okay, which I think we always have, then we add it to the list of acceptable uses. And that prevents having a noisy impact or a late hour impact or use put into that, just because it is a commercial use in the grid and gives us a little bit more ability to protect the residential property around there that existed prior to the commercial property coming in. Generally, if we have a commercial property and somebody builds a house next to it, we look at that differently, that they knew the commercial property was there, but that isn't the case. So I guess how this could work would be to change it to C2, restricted with all of the uses that they currently have. Have you tell us what additional uses you want. We'll come up with the names for those and talk about them, but with what you've talked about so far, I can't see that we'd have any issues. And then add those acceptable uses to the list. And I guess my question first is to staff. Does that seem workable in a commercial property where we have longstanding residential that was there prior to the commercial?
I think so. I think the way that we could do it is we could do it in a manner in which we do C2 restricted with those, and then the most likely. So Stephen, I don't know if you have, I know you don't have it settled on any, but could you give us an idea of what the most likely purchasers?
I would say storage of some sort.
Oh, so you're looking to sell?
Potentially, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Storage of some sort is what, and and I want to be clear, it was always C2. So it was already commercial.
Correct.
It was already commercial, so that hasn't, in my eyes, nothing's changing other than the fact that it may not be used in conjunction with a golf course operation anymore. So the way I see it would be storage of some sort, because that's what it is. And then obviously, we own the property directly to the west as well as the north.
Yeah,
And
the issue is if we rezone it commercial and have it open to everything under that commercial umbrella, 30 years from now, that building could be torn down and something else can be put in.
The counterpoint to that, Ron, would be is you've already, so we have a site plan on file that currently restricts the uses to basically what the restrictions are now. And any future use, whether they use the building that was constructed or not, will have to amend that site plan because you guys have approved a site plan that specifically restricted the uses to the current restrictions.
Okay,
So I think that's the difference in that some of the historical lots that, because I know what you're talking about, some of them.
yeah,
They're lots that have never had a site plan on them, or there's an existing structure that you risk somebody doing 49% worth of improvements on, and then coming back and saying, well, no, I can still use it the way it was being used. For this one, you guys are going to have another action
okay.
before anything other than a golf course related facility goes into.
You know, the city needs commercial. I'm all in for some use other than even storage going in there. I just want to be able to look at it and see how that's going to impact the residential folks around there.
So because of the
Yeah.
way that this one developed specifically, I'm not gonna say that this is an overarching sentiment, but because this is how this one specifically developed, I would say that you have the security of a site plan has to be approved if it's not a use that's already within the
Okay.
restrictions.
Okay,
So I think you can rest assured in knowing that unless it's a golf, I mean, right now, basically what it can be used for without a site plan amendment is something associated with a golf course. Because that's what it says on the site plan, that's how the site plan would be administered.
And that was the intent of the PUD, Planned Unit Development, when
Yep.
Knapp Properties put it together. And that was the intent and the knowledge of the residents that lived around there too, that it would be limited to this purpose. So let's just be very clear with that, right?
Correct.
Any further questions at this time? Thanks, Stephen. Will anyone in the audience like to have comment on this issue? Yes. State your name and address, please.
Sorry, I'm not near as tall as he is. My name's Hannah Robertson. My address is 1340 Timber Valley Drive. So we live just north of this situation. And we do have neighbors that I have spoken to, and my husband's on our HOA, so I'm kind of here as a representative this evening of the whole Big Creek neighborhood up there. So right now, as it stands, with the roundabout that goes into Big Creek, and then the proposed roundabout at, North Side and Third right there, 118th, whatever that is, knowing that those two roundabouts are gonna bookend that property, that makes me anyway very concerned about the flow of traffic through there, especially at school times of the day. It's already scary out there with a lot of high school kids going to Alleman, kind of trying to get back through there. You know, they're coming through about the time that Big Creek, the line is getting long and letting out. And so that's obviously a super, and I know they've probably looked at that, but that's a concern for us because that one roundabout right now is already a little bit of a congestion situation, as well as it gets dangerous because people don't understand how to work it. So those two of those things right in a row with a commercial property in the middle that may have more entrances and more exits onto Third Street is a concern that I've heard voiced several times. Another thing is between those two roundabouts, if somebody has to stop and turn into that property, if that's happening on a regular basis, if it is retail, if it is something that people are in and out of all the time, that turning in and out between the two roundabouts, I think would also cause more congestion, more of a problem, and a more dangerous situation, especially for our younger drivers. I have a 12-year-old, he's not driving yet, but will be shortly. And so, that's just something that we've talked about and thought about at our house. One of my other concerns is that, I think, Ron, you brought it up, there are a lot of other commercial properties available in town. So in my opinion, those probably are already zoned like they need to be zoned and should be filled first. Those are things that are already in commercial areas. They are already zoned for what they have said they're going to do with them. And so I think that it makes more sense to draw business to town and put them in the existing commercial areas that are already available, before we move on to rezoning things that may have other implications. And then last, I did have a logistical question, which may not be able to be answered at this time because I don't think we're sure what's gonna happen with it. But if it is rezoned and it does become storage, is it something that then can be, is it gonna be like one large warehouse? Are we talking several storage units? I mean, I think that's something that has to be looked at too, because several storage units are already being put in out by Big Creek Elementary, right? So that need, to some degree, has already been filled. If it is like warehouse storage space, can that warehouse storage space be then turned into batting cages and things like that, like a lot of other commercial spaces in Grimes or Johnston or Urbandale or Ankeny? You know, is that an option? Because that's something we don't have around here. So if that's something that could be, you know, presented down the line, I mean, I think that would make a difference. But either way, I mean, I think the logistical concerns are something that we are very concerned about. And the fact that there are so many commercial properties already available, we just don't necessarily see the need to have another one rezoned right now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to?
Can I ask some questions? Sure. Of staff? Just in kind of following up, we're talking about a 1.19 acre parcel, and it has an existing building. Do we see that that could be substantially larger than the infrastructure that's there currently?
Because of the size or the required size of the detention basin, I don't foresee it being substantially larger. And what I will say is anything more than, as an example, a contractor using it as a garage space, it's going to require additional parking. So I think, to be honest with you, the trip generation potential for this parcel is fairly low, just based purely on the topography, the characteristics, and the requirements of the parcel itself.
Okay, and then back to the discussion earlier on access to the property. So really no additional access will be allowed, is that my understanding or not?
That would be the stance that we would take right now. We require a shared access between those two parcels. Part of that is a topographical challenge that the part of the lot has, but then the other part of it too is the proximity to the Northside Drive intersection, which will be around about the proximity to the Madison Drive intersection as well. I don't think this parcel is wide enough to meet DOT spacing requirements. I would have to double check on that, but my recollection is that is the reason that the two storage or the two maintenance shed parcels currently share a facility or an access point, is they weren't big enough to facilitate a second access point and not violate spacing requirements with Madison.
Okay, thanks, Travis.
Detention here. He's right.
Any other public comments?
But could he sell portion of this? I don't think that's, you know.
Any other commission comments or questions?
I do. I have a statement to read. Nearly 16 years ago, when we purchased our lot at TCI, we were warmly welcomed into what quickly became more than just a neighborhood. It became a community, from our neighbors to the golf course itself. The sense of belonging and shared stewardship was immediate and sincere. The Franklins even offered their help before we had broken ground. When the planned unit development and TCI were originally established, Knapp Properties took great care in designing a plan that would protect the long-term integrity and value of the development. This includes strict limitations on the types of commercial properties permitted and designed and designated of the golf course as dedicated community parkland, an essential and defining element of the TCI lifestyle. Several years ago, when the golf course owners proposed adding a hotel to support their wedding and event business, many of us who lived nearby had understandable concerns. Such a development could have significant impact the character and value of our homes. Yet, we came together as a community and reached a good faith compromise. Limitations were placed on signage, vehicular traffic was minimized, and pathway, rather than a road, was created to balance accessibility with neighborhood preservation. Unfortunately, that spirit of collaboration has eroded under the current ownership. The tone has become combative and exclusionary. The new owner has restricted residents' access to the golf course, an amenity long shared with neighbors, going as far as to involve law enforcement in situations we believe were unwarranted and disrespectful to longstanding community members. It's important to remember, this is not just a golf course. It has always been and was originally designed as a vital part of our community's open space and parkland. Mr. Keller now seeks a zoning change that would allow non-golf development or on land specifically protected by the original vision and design of the PUD. This stands in direct contradiction to what Knapp Properties in Polk City intended, and to what we as homeowners continue to value and want to preserve. In light of these concerns, I respectfully ask the commission to deny Mr. Keller's request for rezoning.
Any other comments? Questions?
I have an opportunity to speak to that.
Sure.
So first of all, I took over Nat Properties. Bill, too, is a great family friend of ours. He actually approached me to take over the club because they were in significant financial challenges. And so my job was to come in and turn the facility around. With that, number one, I had absolutely nothing to do with the hotel. That was back in 2012, well before my time frame. I had absolutely nothing to do with the hotel and whatever arrangement would have been at the time. What I can share with you is that NAB approached me about helping turn the facility around, which is exactly what I've done over the last 5 years. I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that facility, and I'm now proud to say that I own it outright. I've put nearly $5 million of capital improvements into the club over the years, and what some of your hard feelings towards me come about is trespassing. And we've asked you and your husband numerous times to stop trespassing on our property. Is a huge liability for us. I can't begin to tell you all the different, I've been in the golf business for over 20 years. I can't begin to tell you all the different horror stories I've heard and experienced myself at golf courses. This has to do with safety. We have skid loaders, forestry mulchers, tractors, excavators, you name it, throughout the facility all the time. I've heard tragic situations with walkers out there getting hit by our maintenance equipment or golf course maintenance equipment early on in the morning, as well as damage, vandalism going to the golf course. That
Might want to, I respect your comments there, but maybe keep it more based on our item we have on the table or.
right. Well, she approached.
Yeah.
This comes to a personal thing
Okay.
between the two of us. We had asked her and her husband to stop trespassing, and they were reluctant to do so, failed to do so, and so yes, we had to seek police to help with that. That's what it comes down to, and that's where her comments come from.
No, it's not just my comments come from that. The point of the matter is it's PUD. This is what it was planned for, and now you want to come and change that so that you can make a fast buck. That's interesting. I don't think you're interested in keeping TCI the way it is. I don't think you're interested in working with the community. I don't think you're interested in really protecting what Polk City is.
I don't think you have any idea what you're talking about.
I think I
work-
do,
I
and
work-
we're not gonna talk it anymore.
Yeah, let's keep it based upon the,
help out with all the
Thank you
schools.
for your time, Mr. Keller.
It's Kaler too, by the way.
Taylor,
Get it right.
Keller.
other commission questions or comments or? Motion?
I will make a motion to deny his request.
Is there a second?
So that motion to deny would die on the dais if there's not a second. You still have the opportunity to motion to approve if you so choose.
I'll
Or we
make
could
a
take more.
motion that we recommend to council that they approve the Kaler Golf LLC rezoning request for 1.19 acres from C2 restricted PUD to C2.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call?
Hankins. Bowersox. Yes. Olfest,
Yes.
Triplett,
No.
Augustine,
Yes.
Vogel.
Abstain. All right. Motion passes. Item 6, 900 South Third Street, Dollar Tree exterior finish discussion. Item A, development report.
Yep, so Justin, this is a unique situation. The developer is remote, but Mary has a mic for him.
Okay. You're not. Okay.
I'm blamed out perspective, Bill. I'm here on behalf of Nick with you and help if we had any technical issues, but if Nick's able to give your submission, then we'll go that route.
Okay.
We're gonna try.
Okay, sounds good.
If you could start with name and address.
Can you hear me?
Yes? Yes.
Okay.
Is there any way
My name is Nick Farrow with United Development Group. I'm based out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to attend this virtually. I apologize I'm not there, but I had a work trip scheduled a year in advance, so was not able to be there in person. I've asked Blaine, back in my contract, to be there on our behalf as well. Just a quick synopsis of kind of what the reason why we're here is we have an interest from a small developer. I've done probably 25, $30 Dollar Tree stores throughout Iowa. Dollar Tree has interest in this parcel. We looked at it a couple of years ago and started down this path, and there were some changes to their movement at that time, so it was put on hold. We're bringing it and brought it back to our attention to revisit. And as part of our process, when we look at these, is we first identify a parcel. We take a look at it from the standpoint of physical layout, put together a conceptual site plan to give us a fairly reasonable understanding of whether or not we can fit on the site, which we've done. Recognize we have site plan approvals and so forth to go through down the road, but that's kind of step number one. Step number two then becomes the economics of the deal to evaluate whether or not it's something that makes sense to us financially, makes sense to as far as the cost of land for purchase, and also what type of rent a Dollar Tree would be able to afford. So that's essentially where we're at right now with step two of evaluating the economics of this deal. And in going through the materials of construction portion of the code, we just looking for our most economical option that will satisfy and meet the requirements of the city and give us our best potential opportunity to make the economics work out. So I've been talking with Travis and put together this letter and some pictures that I believe have been shared with all of you, just to basically have a conversation with you folks to understand and get your thoughts and opinions on what we think and hope may be satisfactory, and perhaps engage in conversation as to what other alternatives we may have. Obviously, brick and block becomes a very expensive option, so we've done some other things, one of which is this new prototype that we built in Ames last year that has architectural steel panel elements, foam stone elements, and so forth. So yeah, just to wrap it up, we're not looking for approval at this time. We just want to engage in discussion so that we can put together something perhaps for approval based on the outcome of this discussion.
Yeah. Do you want to go, Travis?
So, as we've done a couple of times here in the last several months, this is a discussion item for the commission. Included in the packet were several pictures, as Nick referenced, of the store that they're kind of leaning towards in Ames, or that was built in Ames, that's kind of the direction they're leaning. As I've talked through it with Nick, I think the biggest thing that we want to understand is feedback, concerns, other things on 900 South Third Street being a Dollar Tree. We would like those to be specifically based in code and concerns that you may have or things that you want to make sure that Nick specifically looks at as he puts together this plan. And then two would be where brick and stone are required in commercial districts per Polk City Code, architectural steel panels are an acceptable alternative. Our opinion is that architectural steel panels are those that are meant to be higher end in design with concealed fasteners that are meant to simulate a polished stone or something like that, which for the most part, we feel a lot of the materials that are being proposed would meet that criteria. So I think that those are really the two big things that we're asking for tonight from the commission is your general feelings about the approach, your general feelings about the use, and major concerns you may have about those things or things that you want to make sure that are addressed, or your feeling on the architectural steel panels. The other thing is Polk City Code specifically prohibits vertical steel siding. My understanding, and Ron, you may have a better history of this than I do, but my understanding is the purpose for prohibiting that material was you didn't want Morton sheds. You did, or Morton shed-esque buildings in those commercial districts. My understanding is that there are some vertical steel elements to what was proposed in Ames, but they're concealed fasteners. And so that would be the other piece of feedback that they would be looking for tonight as well is, would you as a commission consider what they put in Ames as vertical steel siding? And is there a way that if you installed it horizontally, if they broke it up with some sort of other material columns, would that help? Just general feedback along those lines. Again, like Nick mentioned, not looking for approval, not looking for specific, I don't like this, I do like this, but just general feedback on the materials that are being proposed, your feelings on architectural steel panels, and can you, as a commission, give a better definition? And then how do you feel about the vertical steel elements that were included in the Ames store, and what are your feelings on those? So that would be what we're looking for from you guys.
Just want to fire off with questions?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I have some, observations and opinions, I guess. That's what we're kind of looking for at this point in time. First of all, I'd love to see a Dollar Tree in our community, and I think this would be a great location for one. So I certainly want to start off with that and thank the folks for considering Polk City for this store as an option. As I look around the neighborhood out there and look at the new hardware store that's been built and the office building just to the south and the multi-use kind of strip mall just to the south of that, I don't see this particular architectural design fitting in with that neighborhood. And I mean, when I look at what went into the hardware store to make that, they tried to make that be a nice looking building for our community, and also the other two buildings that I cited. I agree with staff and their opinion as to what why we included a steel panel. That was something that we reviewed a while back. And that was pretty specific when we added that in on what we were trying to communicate. Perhaps we need to change our ordinance to make that be even more specific and tight so that it's less confusing to others in the future. As I look around our community, I only see vertical siding in a couple of buildings, and actually those are historic buildings that have been retrofitted at a later date, and we allowed some vertical siding to remain on the building. To my knowledge, we have not allowed any vertical siding on any building built ground up in the last, 25 years, would be a fair statement. And so, given how that neighborhood has built out commercially, I don't see the use of some of the elements that they have in the AIM store being a good fit for the Polk City store, at least in my opinion.
To clarify, Ron, is it material? Is it color? Can you elaborate?
Well, I guess what I'm seeing is a lot of consistency and texture. When I look at even a come and go store that you might see around the community, you see elements that aren't wood but made to look like wood, see different colors, things of that nature. This looks to be mostly flat in texture, and what is brick in texture, which should want to be highlighted, has actually been kind of covered up in colors very similar to the flat portions to make the brick portions less noticeable instead of more noticeable, if that makes any sense.
I wasn't questioning you. I just wanted to make sure we got as much information.
And that's and then in looking at the side and the back of the building, that is just so not in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood. And just as a general note, before we get into any kind of site plan discussions, the fence that's going around the garbage enclosure is just kind of put the frosting on the cake there.
I will tell you the Ames trash enclosure would not fly here.
Yeah. Those are just some thoughts and opinions from one individual.
I agree with Ron. I think it has to, all the buildings that are already on that road and the potential buildings that will be coming, I think we have to give some thought so that they all kind of blend well together. It's an opportunity for Polk City to have something that looks together.
So I guess my question for you to kind of clarify as well would be, if they wanted to use some sort of architectural steel panel, but use a tone or texture that mimicked, so you're not looking for, are you looking for the same specific materials, or are you looking for the same general character?
Well, I think what, at least in my opinion, was kind of getting back to what you alluded to at the beginning, was when we added that, we were looking for something that had the texture that did mimic stone or concrete.
Okay.
That had a texture to it, and from a distance, might fool you.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, to me, that's just a high percentage of metal. I don't object to the architectural metal, but there's such a high percentage of it here in relation to brick or stone. The one side would face the dental office, which is all brick, and I think that would be an issue. I would think breaking that up horizontally some with other materials would be better. So like I say, I don't object to the metal panel per se, but I just think there's too much of it, personally.
I don't fully object to the metal panels, but I'd like to see more consistency with the similar materials, just because if there's any decay or any issues with that existing materials that they propose, we might see long periods of maintenance. I'd also like to see something similar to what Pella does, where they keep the consistency between each buildings and the materials.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
at this point? Okay. One thing that we thought about as an alternative, recognizing the look of the Ace Hardware store across the road is, and this is where we get into this concept of what can we do and what makes sense economically for us. And I recognize that usually the discussion is economics should make a difference, but at the end of the day, we all recognize economics makes all the difference. So, we're looking for an alternative that might help our overall, the overall economics of the deal. And one thing that comes to mind is, there are, products out there that are a cement board material that has a brick or stone finish, brick or stone look to that, but it's a cement board product, which is an acceptable material for an exterior finish, but it doesn't fall in the category under B, where it says acceptable alternative where brick is required. I guess my question would be, because it would be more cost effective than going with an actual stone or brick veneer, is would that possibly be something that we could look at using on the sides and the rear in conjunction with this, in lieu of requiring this 50 or 60% brick or stone? If we had this cement board that had the brick stone look.
My comment goes right back to maintenance. I've delivered to several general stores, Dollar Tree stores, trucking. They start to decay. And then the upkeep of them, just so I'd like to see some more information on what that material looks like, and what your maintenance plan looks like.
Did you?
I wanted to touch base on some of what Nick just talked about and kind of that 50 to 60%, masonry product, and then, the other 40 to 50%, what would be considered an approved siding material. I know we've talked about what we don't like on the architectural metal panel, but I guess what is considered an acceptable metal panel? I don't know if you guys have any insight there.
So I guess,
Do we have any, can we think of any examples, I guess? And
well, this building has architectural metal panels on it. I think P&M Apparel.
yeah, up high, yeah, I think they have some up high.
So I think the big question is there a characteristic with a steel panel that would make this commission go, that's not an architectural steel panel? There's something that jumps out, whether it be visible fasteners, ribbing, is there some characteristic that jumps out as like, that's a no-go? That is, this commission would not accept that as an architectural steel panel.
So 2 examples on the Ames pictures that you're looking at, if you're looking at the front facade and also we've got the return on each side as well as the corners on the back. So those are a McElroy marking lock flush panel. So concealed fastener, flush metal panel. If you're looking at the majority of the sides and the rear, those are what we call they'd be a flat pan standing seam profile, still a concealed fastener. But obviously we've got, the low pan and a high rib, so a much different look. So just trying to maybe clarify between those 2 products.
Well, on the sides and the back of the building, there's no way that you can bring me along on
Sure.
having those included on the building.
Sure.
We had mentioned the P&M building here in town. I think what they have there for the architectural steel was not included in the percent counted as brick. It was in the percent not counted as brick or stone. So it's just some architectural elements up high.
Sure.
So it wasn't as a replacement, if I recall
I think you're right.
the way the building looks correctly. When I look at the front of the building, to me, it looks like, aluminum slats. It does not look like a stone replacement. I don't see how that siding, whether it's vertical or horizontal, could be confused with a stone or concrete texturized product.
Sure. So we fulfill our 50 to 60% based on storefront location, side facing views. The other 40 to 50% product though, that's kind of what we're trying to hammer down here as far as what is that approved product for the other 40 to 50 once we fulfill the cementitious masonry product.
So then, I guess, would this vertical steel paneling, would you consider it vertical steel siding is really the question? As prohibited by code, or does that fulfill the need?
What is on the front of the building here, in the small section that is vertical, I do not have a problem with that if it was not a huge element of the front. I mean, if it was that all the way across the front, it's going to end up looking more like vertical siding. The way you have it here, it is not a huge element. You just have it on the one end, vertical. And to me, this wouldn't meet our stone and masonry requirement when you look at the front of it as far as a percent. But that element being a non-stone or masonry element as a very small percentage, I personally don't have an issue with.
Appreciate that. And that, so then, like Nick mentioned, a lot of it comes down to the economics of it. And when we're looking at, say, the sides and rears and truly looking at what is approved per code, we understand the vertical issue, but concealed fastener panel in a horizontal application, how does that change things?
So it would be like the horizontal elements on the front.
What we're seeing on the sides, the vertical, using that in a horizontal application for our non-masonry products, the 40 to 50%. I guess the big thing, we understand that
It still looks like steel siding.
Yeah.
looks like, just trying to get a better understanding of actual code and how that reads. And
Blaine, let me interject a little something here also on this. So where we're going with this as an example here now, if let's just, for the sake of argument here, if we're going to meet the 50% on the sides of, and say we've got to be a stone or brick, and I take that wainscot and I run it halfway up the wall, right? And I'm going to meet my 50%. And again, I'm not being facetious, but I'm just saying as an example, if I bring that up to meet, so I've got 50% of that wall, and the bottom 50% of that wall is brick, and maybe I run a column or something up in between to break that up. So the remainder of that, by code, is architectural steel panel would be allowed, as would cement board. So we're looking at that if we would rotate that and make that a horizontal, is that number one acceptable? And then the second thing that I would be asking is, getting back to my question about, in an effort to try and give you the brick or block look, if we did that in a cement board product, is there a way that we can get around this 50 to 60%? Because that's where the biggest cost is, and we're trying to use something in this acceptable alternative, with a veneer system or with a cement board or whatever. We're trying to get a feel on what we can come back to. And I recognize that next door has got, a lot of brick on it, and so, the idea would be try and bring something within character that we can still keep a prototypical look for the store identity. That's obviously important for a national retailer, is they have a prototype that they're trying to maintain for identity purposes. So going back to what Blaine said is if we turn this stuff horizontal, that acceptable?
Which product is he talking about horizontal?
we'd be looking at the concealed fastener standing seam profile, which would be on the sides and the rear of the AIM store.
Okay, the sides and rear
Yep,
horizontal.
it'd be the tan panel that you
Okay.
see.
I guess I would ask staff their opinion, and I would certainly not grant an exception for it, or in my opinion. And just kind of historically, when it comes to architectural standards, this commission has been very hesitant to grant exceptions to our architectural standards. If we find something that is pointed out to us where we are out of touch with other cities in the metro, we try to then modify our architectural standards so that not only that applicant, but everybody else after them can be treated fairly and equally. And so far, that's what we've done with the other commercial properties here in town and the other businesses that have built those and moved into those. And so for us to look at an exception, that's something that we normally don't do, I guess is the way to word it.
Okay, so then, again, just to get to this idea, if I take that brick and stone along the bottom, let's just say again for the side, I take that up to 50% of the sidewall. And then I use a architectural steel panel, and I guess that's part of what we're still looking for is that is somewhat of a subjective and arbitrary, and I don't mean to be rude here, but that's a subjective. What is the definition of that? And I heard someone say earlier, if you had a metal panel that looked like brick or stone, well, I'm not really familiar with a metal panel that looks like brick or stone. Most of metal panels look like a metal panel of some nature. So that's the next question then is what do you consider as an acceptable architectural steel panel for the remainder of this thing? Because that's what we got to put a cost to.
In reviewing this, staff has kind of believes that this meets the criteria for an acceptable material for non-stone at least.
For the
And then-
percentage of
And then
non-masonry or stone.
the interpretation or the feedback that we were looking for is, would you consider it a stone alternative? My opinion in looking at the materials that Nick has provided would be that these would definitely meet the criteria for a non-stone element. It was just, do you guys consider it an acceptable alternative for architectural steel or for the stone requirement? And what I'm hearing is if it looks like a steel panel, in a vertical application, you don't view it as a stone alternative, but is it safe to say you would view it as an acceptable?
I guess I don't ever view that this particular steel as a stone alternative. I don't see how that looks like stone or masonry at all.
Yep.
Is that the intent of having that comment in the code that's saying you can use an architectural steel panel as long as it looks like brick or stone? I guess that's what I'm struggling with.
Because would the intent be, because like the architectural steel panels that went on this building were in larger panels versus almost a slat or a siding. I mean, would that be, maybe we're digging into, I think we probably need to clarify what we're looking for in an architectural steel panel.
Correct.
And whether or not we're looking for it to mimic the look and feel of a stone or masonry. I mean, the way that the code is written, what I would say is that the panels on this building probably meet the intent of the code. Would the commission agree with that? In terms of the panels on this building being an alternative to masonry or stone?
I personally would. To me, they are of the scale, or they almost look like a big sheet of granite or something up there from a distance.
Or something that maybe, even if you acknowledge it's steel, it's more of a natural looking slab of steel or slab of metal versus a siding product.
Correct.
So I think that's where we're landing, is if it looks like a siding product, it's not really, it's an acceptable material, but not an alternative to stone. But if you do larger steel panel type architectural things, that would be your stone and masonry alternative that we're talking about in the code.
Yeah, as a portion of the requirement.
Yep.
you know, I wouldn't want to see a row of those across the bottom and call it good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Give you what you need?
I think so.
Okay.
The only thought I had was, because it is somewhat of a residential area up there as well, if they could find something, and I've seen these panels that, they run horizontal, but they look like wood, they're metal panel. Like Heritage Bank and Grimes, as an example, has a bunch of it on there, and they look very nice, and I think it would blend in better. And I've seen metal panels that have, like sand or pebble, almost like a precast look to it, but they are wider, as you mentioned. They're bigger than 16-inch or 12-inch pieces, so I don't know what the costs are on those. I'm just saying, the looks of those are good, and I think they hold up well. So, you know, not being architects up here, I think there's probably some products out there, but I don't know what specifically to recommend. I personally don't have an objection to hardy plank kind of material that looks like brick for the smaller percent, not the big
So when
percent.
we are talking approved fiber cement for the non-masonry product, is that what you're looking at for fiber cement, not a modular 4x8 panel?
Right.
More of a lap siding fiber cement look?
I think on the backside of the building, I think we have to really be careful on the two sides too, because one's facing a business, the other's facing residential. I can't remember exactly what the back faces, but I think there's just a lot of trees back there, if I remember right, currently.
All right, this would end up, I mean, I'm assuming it's gonna be deep enough in the lot, it'll be up against, I mean, its buffer will be up against the
Yeah.
residential.
The buffer.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it was commercial on both sides of
Both
it at
sides, yeah.
some point in time.
Right.
That's what the future land use plan says.
Correct.
With what I'm hearing, you know, this is exactly the conversation we wanted to have, and certainly appreciate the feedback. I'm just thinking out loud in terms of timing and so forth. Is there an opportunity between now and the next meeting that if we kicked around just a couple of sketches saying, you know, what if we did this and what if we did that, and maybe sent some additional cut sheets back? Is there an opportunity that we could get some additional unofficial per se feedback on us offering, based on our conversation here, of offering some other ideas? Because what I'm trying to get to, folks, is something that I can put a price to, so that I can evaluate the economics, and I really need to. I understand it won't be an official approval, but just kind of working towards something that's more along the lines of what the feedback that you've given us here today.
Nick, I'm going to weigh in here. This is Chelsea Huseman. I'm the city manager for the city of Polk City. I think you can work with the city staff. We have some clarity on that piece that we were questioning tonight, so your opportunity would be to work with the city staff, and we will direct you best we can based off of what's in the code. If we need to go to a future planning and zoning meeting, we can do that.
That's great. That was kind of the objective here, was to just work collaboratively with you guys to understand. You know, we can read things in the code and kind of have our own ideas saying, hey, we think this will meet code, but certainly there's thoughts there locally in terms of what you want to see, and that's what we really needed to understand as far as what we need to put together that works for everybody, and try and Blaine and I'll try and come up with a package that we'll put our best foot forward, and you know, try and get a little bit more in line with the character of the neighborhood that you've expressed.
Okay.
Is there any public comment on this item at all? Okay. Any further commission comments, questions? No? Everybody have what they need? All right. Move on to item number 7, architectural design standards discussion.
All right, so in the commission's packet tonight, Jenny Coffin, the city clerk, put together a nice little spreadsheet for you guys to kind of compare some of this, or several of the communities here in the metro, and the architectural standards that you see therein. Generally speaking, what we're seeing is Polk City is competitive, if not a little bit low on their brick percentages, in the C district specifically. So I think that's kind of the first piece of it is I would say that the architectural standards you guys have don't exceed very many communities. And the communities that they do exceed, Bondurant, Johnston, I would say are a little bit different. So I don't know that we would make a recommendation to change those architectural standards as they currently exist, in terms of percentages. But then the bigger conversation and kind of why we did this deep dive a little bit was Ron had mentioned at one point, specifying or otherwise controlling what accessory structures on multifamily developments look like. And what we're finding is pretty vague in terms of what these other communities look at. Specifically, you'll see as you look through some of the accessory structure standards, they use terms like character, in general design thought, or like those kinds of sentiments where design compatibility, that was the word I was trying to come up with. Where it's very vague in terms of what that exactly means. It leaves a lot up to interpretation. What I will tell you is I think it's Urbandale's is pretty much like, it's written in a manner that's like, if we don't like it, we're gonna reject it. And I think because they're, in the center of the metro, that works for them. I think some of these though, one in particular, I actually like the way that Bondurant has theirs written in terms of design compatibility required, and then detached garages and accessory structures. And they list out all the things that they're talking about, have architectural detail, scale, and color similar to the multifamily structure that they are associated with. So I think generally speaking, we would like feedback, thoughts, from the commission on, are there any specific requirements you want? Do you want windows on these? Do you want it to generally match the character? Do you want to be really prescriptive with this code write-up? Do you want to be more interpretive and, allow us the flexibility to kind of have some flexibility? And does it meet the general nature of the primary structure? Just kind of looking for feedback so that we can get a better idea of what kind of architectural standards we want to propose to the commission, so that we don't have to, go through 4 or 5 meetings trying to get it honed in. I guess, is there a community you really like their standards? Is there something you specifically don't like? Kind of give us the guidance for writing these accessory structures, and then taking feedback as well on other modifications of the architectural design standards.
And I want to add a few things here. Travis, I noticed in the Excel spreadsheet, we don't have Polk City's standards listed.
Correct.
Can we go over those really quickly so the commission understands what the standards are for Polk City?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Cody, would you pull the residential ones? Those I don't have memorized, but, commercial is, 60% of frontages facing public right-of-ways or shared access points are to be masonry or stone, or the acceptable alternatives as defined by code. Then the other 40% is acceptable building materials that demonstrate permanency and durability. All sides not facing a public right-of-way or shared access is 50-50 with brick and stone, and then those acceptable building alternatives. The M districts are a little less strict in that there's no brick requirement, but that those districts are still driven by permanency and durability. So the prohibited materials, vertical steel siding, plywood. I think there's 3 other materials are specifically prohibited. Those are not allowed in any zoning district in the city.
Very close.
So plywood, particle board, concrete block, and vertical steel siding are your prohibited materials. And then you've got for commercial structures, that the brick requirements and stone requirements. And then I think the residential, it's 15% for residential, so single-family residential. And then, I think it's 30 for multi. Yeah, so 30% stone and brick for multifamily, 15% for single family, 60% for commercial that faces a right of way or shared access, 50% for all other sides. And then the M1 is purely acceptable materials, no stone and brick. So I think that would be the one thing that if this commission wanted to go down that path, it looks like a lot of communities step down their M1 requirements, but they still have those brick and stone requirements as part of the M1, or the M districts.
So we've been working on the accessory structure component for a few months, and I just wanted to add how we got to kind of looking at just architectural standards in general. Within the last few months, the city council has prioritized doing and receiving development feedback through a survey. So the city partnered with Go Polk City to kind of collect feedback from some recent developments that have occurred in Polk City. One of the pieces of feedback we received was that we had really high architectural standards for commercial districts. So we thought this could be a good opportunity for us to take a holistic view of architectural standards for not just residential and accessory structures, but the commercial component as well. And get you all talking about what you do like and what you don't like about our architectural standards. From a city staff perspective, I will tell you that the clearer the code is, the easier it is for the city staff. So obviously we had the discussion point tonight regarding acceptable materials. So from the city staff, I might ask the Planning and Zoning Commission to put some time and effort into this process to see if we could maybe clear up our code and what we define as acceptable materials, because it just makes it so much easier when the city staff does meet with developers. So I just wanted to add that piece before you all offered your feedback on what you have in front of you tonight.
If we're looking at Windsor Heights, C2, C3, C4, where they're being very specific with the linear frontage, I prefer that, just having that definite size parameter, but still being a little bit flexible to say, it doesn't need to be, if there might be something that comes up, or we might need to change 5 feet or so, one direction or another.
And that's something I should mention is the commission thinks about this too, is a lot of communities, so it won't be reflected here per se, but a lot of communities do what we call overlay districts. So you don't apply specific architectural standards to specific zoning districts, but you say, and the example I'm gonna give is, so like along 126th, where the city's gonna grow, we have a commercial hub there at 26th and 44th when the city gets to that point. Well, that may make sense to do an overlay district where you have a specific architectural look or a specific look that you're looking for in that area. It would be similar to what we've done in a lot of communities do these town square or downtown districts, and the city has adopted some general architectural guidance for the CTS district. But basically what it would do is it would allow us to not have 6 or 8 C districts, but you have a C2 district with the 44th Street overlay district on top of it. So I think that would be another thing that we could go down that path of as well, if the commission would want to do that.
are you expecting this tonight or just wanting us to
No,
think more about it? Okay.
We can certainly, allow you an opportunity to review the information. We could rediscuss in a few months from now, if that works for everybody. We're just looking for some general feedback. We wanted to start with planning and zoning to see if there was any opportunity to make changes to the standards.
Is there an opportunity to maybe provide a listing of materials that have, and their longevity to kind of, to your point, to making sure, especially in commercial areas, that, you know, that they don't deteriorate quickly? You know, we want to make sure that you do put in investment, and yet if there is some provisions that we allow some variance in, that type of thing, that might be helpful too.
Okay.
Or what other communities have done to address that. I don't know if that's, I mean, just if you've had that opportunity, that would be very helpful.
Are in the metro, I don't think we should be at the leading edge of, development of terms and ideas when it comes to that. I'm curious to see what words others have used for their material types and things of that nature. However, when I start looking at commercial aspects of our community, since we are on the edge of the metro, I would like our commercial architectural standards to be more like the metro and less like rural areas or communities not all that far from us. I really want us to, even though we are a smaller town and not that long ago had a very, very, very small town feel, we need to start thinking of us as a member of the metro.
And what I will say too, in reviewing some of these, I didn't realize how many communities and like specify how many window or how much window space you have to have on frontages and on elevations. I don't know that the way that you guys do it, being with those percentages being exclusive of glass, I think it, to be honest with you, without specifying the specific proportion, it encourages glass. Because if they can put glass in place of brick, they're gonna put glass in place of brick. And so the way that your code's currently written, I think it actually drives people towards glass. So that's another thing to consider too. If you have,
Is that a bad thing or a good thing?
I think that's a matter of opinion. I like glass.
Yeah, I mean, it can be nice, it can
Yeah.
be well done.
Yeah. But if you get something like the Kraus building downtown, I think that would be a little too modern for what you guys are after as an architectural standard. So maybe capping it is actually the way we want to go.
Yeah.
How much time would you like to review this, these materials?
Next meeting be acceptable?
I would think so.
And just back to the question that we had about, what, do other communities specify what the other architectural, what other kind of elements are acceptable for, for brick and stone, and, how specific are they and what can we glean from that?
Okay, we'll have to do some digging because
Yeah,
we were strictly looking percentages and
I mean,
proportions.
We had a good lesson tonight on how having words that are more generic and less specific can be a bad thing. Sometimes those kinds of words give you flexibility, but other times, people will try to push your flexibility into into things that weren't contemplated when you came up with those words.
Well, and what I will tell you is building materials change so frequently. So like to Deanna's point about like the permanency and the durability, where my mind naturally goes is let's pick a design lifespan. Because almost all of those materials are gonna have some rating for how long they're supposed to last. And so maybe that's the path we go down versus saying,
it has to be a 2-inch stone slab or a 3-inch steel panel, or it has to have this specific glazing. We put the onus on the developer of like, you need to demonstrate that your manufacturer will support this for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever that number is. And then we can kind of back check that against some of the cut sheets that we've had in the past in terms of, is that information we can routinely get, or is that is 20 years too much, but 10 years isn't enough? We can kind of find that sweet spot. But that's naturally where, when Deanna, what you said, that's where my head went, is provide us a cut sheet. And those suppliers, that's a marketing tool. They're going to tell you, I've got a warranty on this for 10 years, but the design lifespan's 20, And so can we get that documented? Because that obviously demonstrates the durability and the permanency and the comfort level that the commission can have with that material, so.
Can we also ask or require that what is being built along that, on Third Street, in that area, kind of resemble what's already been built?
So that would be actually the opportunity we have with the overlay district, particularly because the future land use plan along Third is all commercial. And, once you get north of the property we were talking about tonight, there's really not a lot of commercial there. And so that would be the opportunity that I think we have for an overlay district, where we specifically look at the elements that you want to carry through. Is it the stucco on the Ace Hardware, or is it the amount of brick in that area? Is it the color of the brick? Is it the grout color, the grout size, that kind of stuff? Just some of the elements that we, when we say, because carrying the character of the things around it, that's a very broad general term that I think a lot of people kind of understand, but there's still that interpretation. So I think that the corridors that we're thinking about from like an overlay district perspective are that 44th and 126th intersection, the Northwest 44th corridor, and then the 3rd Street corridor as well. Bridge, we probably could do something, but the fact of the matter is a lot of those lots are already developed. And so is it worth the squeeze to kind of put that out there? We still have one property that's open. We've got some buildings that are potentially aging out as far as like the maintenance cycle on those things. So it may be worth going into that path. And does the commission want to suggest some sort of overlay district on the town square that supplements the CTS district? Or that one is probably easier, just to say the CTS district architectural standards are now this. But kind of thinking in that frame of mind where we have the flexibility of specific neighborhoods being driven by specific standards.
On Third Street, in that area, we have the buildings that are there. We have a nice thing going.
Yep, 100%. And I think a lot of architects, like their standard of care is to not stick out like a sore thumb. And so I think that naturally lends itself to kind of those characteristics. But I think from a staff perspective, it'd be a lot easier if we could just say, yeah, these are the things that you have to hit. And that's what character of the neighborhood means.
All right.
Got homework, you've got homework. Deal?
So just, I guess, a bit of a follow-up on the large structure garages or the accessory structures. On the back page of the packet, I actually took some photographs when I was driving around town of things that I thought looked appealing to me. And, but, seeing something that, does that mean that developer wanted his property to look nice and better than the rest, and so we did this? Or is this something that the city came up with an architectural design to say these are the things that are required? But I thought there were some good examples there of structures that ordinarily would look long that have been broken up by having a few units of the garage to kick out a little bit in the front, same in the backside, to have some kickouts, some roof line changes and things of that nature. As opposed to, I think we only have one example of large garage structures in Polk City. And that isn't even for an apartment complex, it's actually for more of a townhome, kind of a complex. But it certainly has a different look than than what I see in other communities. And I guess I just wanted to, with us seeing apartments coming at us in the future, wanted to have some idea of what we wanted those to look like.
Yeah, so I think that would be another thing that we would ask the commission to kind of be prepared for, thoughts on that. That final column in that spreadsheet that was in the packet refers to, that's the information we had on accessory structures, which is what those garages would qualify as. What I will tell you is the example you gave that started this whole conversation was the one on Grimes. And we actually called the city of Grimes, and that was a developer choice based on the PUD restrictions that they put in there.
Okay.
So that is the Heritage PUD. And I've looked through that PUD document, and they actually did something very similar to like what Big Creek Technology Campus was, where NAP has a design review committee. That's the Heritage PUD is kind of held to the standard of the Heritage Design Committee. I don't know if it's actually called that per se, but that's kind of the same concept of something similar you guys have experienced. So like Lakes Early Learning Center, your review of the architectural design standards was only the first step. And your approval was actually subject to the design review committee approving that layout or that design. So that's what the one specifically, Ron, that you had referenced in Grimes.
Yeah.
That one is controlled by a PUD, but there are several communities that it looks like specifically dictate and control what those accessory structures look like.
And the Grimes building on those photos is number 4 and number 8 are actually the front and back of some of the same buildings in the complex.
Versus, this is what we have.
So I think we have the opportunity that if there is a specific look that P&Z likes, we could definitely mimic that. And you can kind of get some of the language that other communities use, but I think we have the ability to kind of do that.
Okay.
All right,
Okay, we'll talk in a month.
sounds good. Item number 8, reports and particulars. No council liaison. City manager?
Don't have anything. Thank you.
Nothing? You bet. Staff? Commission?
I just had one question. Our stormwater, and this probably isn't maybe even a P&Z, but more for staff, is we have our stormwater management inspections that have to be performed by a licensed engineer every year, which gets expensive. I think council just passed that recently, last year or so. I guess the question is, can it be done without a licensed engineer? Can it be photographed, a report filled in, inspected by the property owner, or what drives it to a PE? Because it does get expensive for the property owner, developer.
I think this would be year 3 or 4 maybe
Of this?
of that requirement. The reason for a professional engineer is, well, it's the expertise. What we've seen typically from the development side is that the design engineer is typically the one inspecting that. And the idea would be is that they're supposed to be looking at the stormwater management plan and making sure that that detention facility is functioning in general conformance with that stormwater management plan. And the history on that is with subdivisions and site plans, we require the engineer to provide a certified letter stating that grading and that stormwater management facility was constructed in accordance with their plan, so that we have a snapshot in time for that functionality. What I will tell you is I think if there is a concern about cost, if the professional engineer that the developer's talking to is willing to send out an unlicensed engineer that is under their direct supervision,
as long as the licensed professional can certify that they are agreeable to the inspection results, that would meet the criteria. Because that's the way that licensed engineers operate in the state of Iowa. Work done under their direct supervision can be certified under their seal.
Okay.
Any other comments? All right.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Adjourned.
What required?
Probably should, but.
That's all right.
Gonna-